Thank you very much for joining me as there is new news, big news about Civilization 7. Hello again there, friends and fans. Raptor here, and just less than 12 hours ago, big news, some big news about Civilization 7 has dropped, and more news is on the way as the developers are constantly attending events like PAX West, and we'll have a big reveal even more on gameplay on September 12th. So make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and join me for more all things Civilization and Civ-like games as we get ready for the launch, hopefully sometime, February of 2025. Some more details regarding some more of the civilizations coming to Civilization 7 has dropped, including more info on Japan. But as of today, India and Rome. More details on them and their paths down the Antiquity Age, Exploration, and Modern Ages as well. Things like, for example, becoming the French Empire, or eventually going down the Chola Exploration Age for India, which seems very exciting, playing as Ashoka or also as Napoleon or Augustus. But we'll get to that in a minute. We now have, of course, more news regarding some of the things to do with AI and what some of the big design decisions are for Civilization 7, which many people are calling humankind to ? But as we learn more from the developers and as more people are asking questions, there does seem to be some good hope here. A lot of potential about something that actually could turn out to be good, and that's exactly what I was rooting for the whole time, with the developers taking a step back from the look and feel of Civilization 6 and trying to make things appear more like Civilization 5. Now they've restructured this with more manageable chapters, and that's one thing too that raised a lot of questions, how exactly things will work in the Antiquity Age, Exploration, and Modern for the modifications between the differences in culture, and of course things like, becoming Roman and then eventually becoming the French Empire, that type of thing. So each of the civilizations will be featured at their strongest point in history. So obviously, as you're leading a civilization, you want to do it at its best time in history, and that also is something that apparently the AI will try to do as well, following historical paths. So you're not going to end up with a crazy, more than likely, Rome, then becoming something along the lines of feudal Japan somehow. Who knows if it'll happen, but yeah, it looks like the AI, especially when playing against the player, will try to pick more historical roles, and so you are the one who gets to experiment more, especially if you're playing with nations that could cross and become a part of another nation later in history, or a part of a different civilization. Very interesting. Now, of course, not only are they going to feature things where the nations are featured at their strongest time, but also there'll be new objectives and milestones for each of those leaders too, and there'll be overall goals, not just the regular goals of a science victory or a cultural victory, but also some things that the nations or the civilizations can do that sets them apart, as well as, of course, mods. Yeah, we'll have some modded victories and some other things that will be supported after release, and so I hope that we get some sort of a map editor, which would be very powerful for us to be able to make different types of continents and different battles, and of course different areas in higher detail, which would be very interesting. They've elaborated on specialists and the return of enhanced and refined details for that, more similar to 5, more detail and control on each of those different aspects rather than it just being a larger scale, a little bit more depth there, which is good. And of course there is a hard settlement cap, but that also could be increased via your culture or empire choice. For example, Rome having a few more than others as they expanded a bit, but there will be many more ways to get past the hard cap, which some of you were concerned about, I can recall in some of our recent videos. Now, one thing that was confirmed that I'm very excited about is that the map will actually expand as you play. So as you try to take out some of the other civilizations, things will change as you get towards the Age of Exploration and the Modern Age too, so there'll always be more territory to claim. So even though the nations that are very capable, or the civilizations that are very capable at doing that exploration and setting up settlers and setting up cities, yeah, they might be really good at the beginning to do that, but that doesn't mean it's over, giving other civilizations time to shine mid-game or later on, depending on when their civilization shined in actual history. So that's quite exciting, and I like that change, and hopefully that's also an option to where we can change that too, to where it could be the whole map all at once. If we get those options, that's very good. But of course, as you'd imagine, yeah, there's more DLC planned, of course. We'll probably more than likely see a lot of updates after their planned launch, and maybe some updates between now and its actual launch, because a lot of player feedback and perhaps some other people doing some beta testing on the side. But rest assured that, this is going to be a very long life game. People are still playing tons of Civilization 5 and, of course, Civilization 6 because it's on Game Pass, and so many people are hyped about 7. And the developers did say that around 4,000 to 5,000 people are still playing Civilization 3 on Steam, so let me know down below if you're one of those people who are still playing 4, 3, 2, well, you name it. But now, again, to remind you all, there will be much more information on September 12th. There's going to be a huge developer gameplay reveal, so we'll be able to see a lot more of them actually playing the game and then explaining why things are a certain way, some things that creators and maybe journalists missed upon our ability to play this for 3 hours. Remember, I was able to go to their HQ and actually play about 3 hours of this game myself. Not enough time to even get through or even close to getting through the Antiquity Age, but hopefully that lends some hope for those of you who want to play multiple multiplayer campaigns that take place over the course of multiple weekends. So, good stuff. But there's more news to cover. Let's move on to more information about those new civilizations, shall we? Well now, love it or hate it, big changes are coming to Civilization 7, some things being brought over from Civilization 6, and some things being brought over from Civilization 5, and maybe even before. But one of the change that, well, love it or hate it, brings joy or confusion or maybe contempt from many of you is a system that's got a lot of people concerned, going between the Antiquity, Exploration, and Modern Age known as chapters, and of course the system that a lot of people are comparing to humankind, or really saying humankind too. Now we have India and Rome confirmed. I think we kind of knew that they were going to be there, not only because we've seen some images of that before, but they've elaborated on that, and it kind of is hard to, I mean, honestly, it's hard to picture a civilization game without Egypt or Japan or Rome and maybe even India. And so it's an interesting thing to be able to see that the ages of antiquity, exploration, or the modern age for these civilizations can be quite different. For example, starting as Napoleon or Augustus and then going through to be Rome or Roman, and then the Normans, and then the French Empire at the modern age for the Roman Empire, and or being, for example, India, and then going through as Ashoka through the different ages as well, and playing somewhat similar yet very different nations or cultures or empires, whatever you'd like to call them. It depends on what you're playing as, but we do have those confirmed, as well as Japan recently too, kind of getting a little bit more of a look on being able to stay more conservative with like the values and the architecture and style and whatnot, more of a closed nation versus a more modern and maybe traditional, like as in historically accurate Japan too through history. So always good to see more options here. And again, I need to be able to see the developers play this on September 12th, and also play a lot more myself. I'd like to play at least 100 hours before I get my thoughts on this game. Other than that, I'm excited and would like to play more. Nothing really makes it seem like, well, I can't play this. No, I'm actually really inspiring everyone else and encouraging everyone to at least give it a try, especially when it'll be on Game Pass, to see how this will differ from the previous games and to see if this is really going to be a bop or a flop. And I hope that we have something that's very good based on the changes that are being brought to 7 to flip it up with the chapters, which is a good risk, I think. I hope it's one that pays off for them, but also to bring in things that a lot of people loved about 5, and that is something that goes on into about how, we'll talk about it a little bit later, but really how things like the districts will operate, and of course with the different specialists that will operate in those districts of each city, but we'll get to that in a little bit. But of course we have potential paths for Egypt, for example, and districts will have unique buildings added over time. So that way, when you go to change from Roman to eventually Norman to eventually the French Empire, that change will be gradual, and you'll see things like lighthouses and other buildings in the distance change over time to really kind of slowly show over the course of, well, hundreds or thousands of years, as of course a Civ game should span. You'll see the gentle changes that eventually will be a gradual change to your military units, your buildings, the roads and bridges and modern transportation and aircraft that hopefully will make it look good between the transitions to antiquity, exploration, and modern ages. So very excited about that. And yeah, like for example, orange roofs for the Roman buildings, the Norman lighthouses and buildings made of thatch and wood that hopefully will blend everything together. And then of course Roman traditions will stay around, but those buildings may leave you or get less benefits over time, like the Colosseum and wonders and things like that might not be as powerful as they once were based on your choices too. So that might be something that a lot of people may not like. But we have ourselves more confirmed civilizations, and we'll get even more over time. And it's good to see that the ones that we always are hoping to be in there, it's almost like a sports draft where you know that certain players are going to be picked, but it's, well, basically by who. And yeah, of course, they got to get the big ones in there. So there's no doubt that we're going to see things like China, Russia, and maybe even, I don't know, a small nation known as Great Britain. Yeah, of course, that's already in there through what they've told us before. But I'm just saying that I think the basics are there, and I'm really hoping to be surprised by some wild ones that I didn't see coming. But there are already talk of pre-order bonuses that will include some native civilizations too. That will be interesting to play as. That I haven't really played with much since maybe Rise of Nations, if you remember that game, or even Age of Empires 3, which I thought was very cool. Again, do some more things with the Americans, or the Americas, let's say, of course. So, very big changes coming to AI. The AI, of course, will be a little bit more intelligent with its choosing of historical pathways, but it'll also try to focus on storytelling, where the player will get to be the first one to choose certain things. And because there'll be fewer decisions for the AI, like, for example, less military units on screen with how things can be packed up and moved through military commanders or deployed that way, there'll be less computations put towards moving units around on the field and actually, like, using them to attack. I mean, of course, to be able to move, you'll have to attack, and in order to attack, you'll have to move, but it's less calculations that the CPU will have to put towards things like just movement, and can actually plan out beautiful cities and or large military campaigns. So hopefully there's some very good changes there, and I'm optimistic to see what it'll be. And of course, it'll be a raw AI at the start, but then get more intelligent as time goes on, and more choices unlocked for special units, better commanders, and I don't know. I'm really excited to see that. Now, that does mean that we'll have new civilizations with emphasis on multiplayer too, and we'll have to see how multiplayer will play out when that map expands, and also how those chapters will differ for players who might want to pick it up again later and play a game every, I don't know, like we do here on the channel, every weekend with certain people, or every couple of days, and so that way you can come back to it so no one's exhausted through an entire game, with then, of course, the more emphasis on AI. So then you'll have, of course, you, your friends, and maybe the AI to play together, and of course, that means, well, it's going to take a long time, but with these changes to AI, it could mean for a more smooth experience. So very excited to see that. Very, very excited indeed. Was happy to see everyone on stage explaining some things that I talked about as well during our initial video, talking about the changes of London over time from the Age of Antiquity, with the settlement of, a Roman settlement that eventually then became modern-day London, and how those structures and buildings and city changed, which also reflects how it became Great Britain over time, and or the City of London. And I think they did a good job of explaining themselves, showing some trailers, answering some questions, and these folks actually really taking some good questions right off the bat, and trying to, well, cover up any sort of confusion with actual answers and truth, and not necessarily just trying to dodge these questions. And they're more open to more in the future with their event again on September 12th. And there's big news to come on that day, and then more news before release, and then after as well. I'm suspecting DLCs and hopefully more questions to be answered from folks as we get closer to launch. So the good news is this game is not releasing in a month or a couple of months. It's releasing next year, and so we have a lot of time to be able to see how things will play out. Hopefully there'll be maybe something along the lines of a demo, or something that we can all get our hands on, and I'm very excited for the future of Civilization 7. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for joining me. Now, let me know your thoughts down below. Leave a like, and I'll see you all next time. Goodbye.